On the wall of my eldest son's room, there one day appeared the omnipresent, iconic image of Mom disguised as Holly Golightly, reflected in the window of Tiffany's. "And what is this thing doing here, Vincenzo?" I asked him, with a touch of reproach. "But Papa," he answered stubbornly, "it's grandmother." It is to him and to his sisters, Marta and Alice, that I dedicate this book, for before letting her go, I must try to let them know who their grandmother was, behind that enormous black sheath and the large sunglasses. And in doing so, I believe that our images at home are no less important than all those impeccable black and white photos, and that the notes in the margins of her favorite recipes matter as much as those in her scripts.
I've always really liked Audrey Hepburn. Not because she was a gamine little fashion icon, although that's certainly a part of her appeal, or because of her work in classics like Breakfast at Tiffany's or My Fair Lady, or in cooler films like Wait Until Dark and Robin and Marian. Rather, I've always had a fondness for Audrey Hepburn because of who she was before and after she was Audrey Hepburn. Maybe it's because of the fact that she was infamously averse to ever writing an autobiography, turning down several offers from prestigious would-be co-authors, but it's always rubbed me the wrong way that Audrey Hepburn is mostly remembered as pretty, when she spent her early years collaborating with the Dutch resistance during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands, and her latter years advocating for the rights and welfare of children throughout the global South. However she may have resisted the idea of writing about her own life, that didn't stop other authors from publishing numerous biographies of Audrey Hepburn, ranging from Barry Paris's fairly in-depth biography to the rose-hued lady schlock you find littering your average Barnes & Noble, like How to Be Lovely, and What Would Audrey Do? Audrey Hepburn's sons, Sean Hepburn Ferrer and Luca Dotti, also published biographies of their mother, more poignant pieces, filled with family photos alongside the more recognizable publicity stills of their famous mum. Dotti's, simply titled Audrey at Home, is my favorite of the two. Instead of a traditional biographical narrative, Dotti chooses to represent his mother through what he describes as a kitchen table biography. In essence, a recipe book, interwoven with family photos and stories about the life of a famous actress as seen through the eyes of her youngest son. It's possibly the most intimate mode of biography I've ever come across. I'm Hoots, this is my YouTube channel, and I've talked about food quite a bit here. It's kind of a recurring motif in my work. I not only love to make and eat food, but I find the history and politics of food particularly fascinating. So the idea of a biography told through the important recipes to the subject is one that I find very touching and irresistible. So I decided to make a few of the recipes from Audrey Hepburn's biographical cookbook in order to understand the screen legend in a way that only someone sitting at her kitchen table can. And I invited a few of my friends around to taste Audrey Hepburn's cooking and to give me their thoughts, including my friend Spark, who is the general manager of events and catering for a couple of large corporations whose names I'm not actually allowed to mention, but he is an expert. First of all, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I've had the privilege of being able to eat with you and inviting me, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you so much for letting me be a part of this experience, because I'm part of the culinary world. I love cuisine, and I love the idea of how you're focusing on Audrey Hepburn through food, because I am a huge fan of My Fair Lady, so I just want to say that right away. I mean, I grew up with my grandmother showing me everything from Singing in the Rain, Fred Astaire with Top Hat, and My Fair Lady with Audrey Hepburn, and I still have to this day the 2-part VHS of My Fair Lady on VHS. If for any of you guys, that don't know what that is, it's a videotape. But yeah.
So this is, these recipes are actually a biography of Audrey Hepburn that was written by her son.
Oh, it was written by her son? I didn't realize that. That's such a beautiful way. I mean, recipes revolve around family.
Yeah.
And so it's you always know the staple dishes that your family made, and those were the things that allowed people to just talk and have conversation and just be themselves, you know? And so that's so cool that Audrey Hepburn is known as a humanitarian, an Oscar-winning actress, and her son made a cookbook to show another side of her, and I think that's amazing.
So let's delve into the other side of Audrey, with some recipes she made at home. First up, we'll need about 3 pounds of tomatoes, an onion, a carrot, a stick of celery, some basil, and lots of pasta, because we're making...
It's fair to say that a plate of spaghetti al pomodoro was my mother's favorite dish. She would have pasta once a day, and spaghetti al pomodoro at least once a week.
Mom had a serious addiction. She couldn't do without pasta. I remember one of our last trips together. Robert picked up her suitcases to take them to the room. The large one, which held her clothing and things for the beach, was light. The other one was small but heavy. "What did you put in here, bricks?" he asked. "Spaghetti," Mom answered with a satisfied smile.
Audrey Hepburn's favorite dish was a simple spaghetti with pomodoro sauce. It's light, simple, and classic, just like Audrey herself. It's hard to go wrong with something like this, and seemed to be a pretty big hit with my guests. Gumbo the French Bulldog certainly seemed to like it.
You had 1 onion, 1 carrot in there, and it was just to add flavor to the tomatoes, and we didn't even end up using it. I kind of wanted that onion and carrot in there, but then eating it, it still had so much flavor.
I loved it. I could taste exactly what I was going for. I can just picture her eating it, you know, at like a nice cafe.
It's a standard. It's so basic yet so essential, just like standard beautiful flavors.
What do you think makes a recipe timeless?
I think first of all, that's a great question. I mean, well, it's funny because that's such a loaded question, because you have cuisine from the past that is still like the basic cuisine of, like, you know, making a roux, having spaghetti pomodoro. Yeah. And then you have things that are basic in the future, like a Pop-Tart. You know what I mean? Like that is basic standard food to somebody. And to me, I think what makes something a standard of food that will go on and be timeless is something that, first of all, brings joy to people, makes it easy for people, and brings people together, or makes it easier for their life. When you look at high cuisine, a simple dish is the hardest dish sometimes to make. Omelets is, yes, if you're staging to be, you know, to work for a French chef, they'll most likely ask you to cook an omelet, because there is a procedure, a process in creating something that's seems so easy, but yet is so refined.
I could see it at a New York cafe, like it'd be passable as like their pomodoro, you know, it's fine. It was good even, but it wasn't like, you know, inspiring a new generation of like Italian chefs.
But you know, she had kids. This isn't a red carpet event or anything like that. This is literally like family and friends coming together. And I think that's one of the most beautiful, humane things, to show somebody that had so much notoriety of being a public figure and still being humble and just wanting to bring people together with food. The fact that her son went out of the way to like create a beautiful cookbook about all the things that she loved to cook based off of recipes that she got from her family and friends. That says so much in its own right there. Oh my God, I'm so excited for our other 2 dishes. I cannot wait.
After dinner, we settled down for one of Audrey's evening rituals, a finger or 2 of whiskey and a square of dark chocolate. Audrey Hepburn had an alleged serious chocolate addiction and had drawers full of dark chocolate that she guarded with the jealousy of a dragon. and one of her regular indulgences was a square of chocolate and a little whiskey, which is a pairing so good that we all decided that all bars should serve whiskeys over a certain price point with a complimentary square of dark chocolate. And it might become my new evening ritual too. This book is about food and recipes and famous actresses, but it's also about a book that a son wrote about his mother and the recipes she left behind and loved. And I highly recommend that you and any of the food lovers in your life check out Audrey at Home. But there's another book I'd like to talk about for a moment. The book. No, not the Bible. Can you imagine if this video just took a hard turn into youth pastor territory? I know someone else who was really pretty and fed the poor and downtrodden. I'm talking about the book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding Civilization. I was so excited when Hungry Minds reached out to me about this sponsorship because my boyfriend had already seen this book somewhere and wanted a copy so badly. The book is a beautifully illustrated compendium that makes the perfect gift for the curios collector or history buff in your life. The book is a painstakingly crafted encyclopedia of civilization, clocking in at over 400 pages and involving the collaboration of dozens of artists, scientists, and experts. Also, look at the size of this thing. This is substantial. My body for scale. Our copy of the book is going to be our permanent coffee table book now. Everyone is going to want to see this thing when they come over. The artwork is honestly my favorite part. It has this whimsical, very Jules Verne kind of 19th century retro futurist quality. It's the most beautiful, charming thing, and with the holidays coming up, I plan on buying copies for the nerds in my life. If you also want to get a thoughtful, unique gift for your loved ones, head to howtobuildcivilization.com and grab your copy. Thanks to the folks over at Hungry Minds for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to see ad-free versions of this and all of my videos, simply join my channel members or head to patreon.com/littlehoot and become a patron today.
Purists may prefer to skip this little chapter. If they read it, I would suggest they put aside their prejudices and suspicions at the door, in order to more lightheartedly challenge certain rigid rules, and not merely those that are culinary in nature. Mom had grown up during wartime, and as a child, she was allowed almost no indulgences, and few opportunities for pranks. When the bombs were a thing of the past, Mom resumed her strict ballet studies and then adjusted her new career as an actress. Now she could let everything slide. And her very personal view of a good life included relaxing in front of the TV with a plate of penne and ketchup.
This recipe is what Luca Dotti refers to in Audrey at Home as our junk food, and all of us were a little skeptical at first, to put it lightly. We had penne and ketchup.
Penne and ketchup.
Give me your thoughts on that!
Oh my god, so obviously it's day 2, and we knew about the penne and ketchup. And so the whole mindset of that was disgusting, oh my god, and we've talked about how ketchup on eggs is amazing, but you would not think of putting that together. But it is an American staple. And penne with ketchup, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. Interesting.
It really is just a little penne tossed in some butter and olive oil and just enough ketchup to turn the pasta pink and give it a slight sweetness. Then some grated cheese on top. It's not as gross as it initially sounds. And what is ketchup but salt, sugar, and acid? And after all, what is most pasta sauce but just a little salt, sugar, and acid?
But it was great. It was good. I mean, it wasn't... Okay, to be fair...
With enough cheese, it was good.
So it wasn't amazing, but it also wasn't totally gross.
I think I have a biased opinion because of how I look at ketchup. There's pastes, there are homemade ketchups, and I don't even like those ones. I literally like Heinz, and the recipe called for Heinz. It has a very slight tang of vinegar and sugar, but it's just so slight that you're like, yeah, I could just eat this, and it's it's a carb dish. And I think that's hilarious that someone like Audrey Hepburn, that is one of the most skinniest people in the world, was able to ate that, and that was her oh, we're gonna be bad tonight.
What is your junk food?
Oh my God, I can tell you, at this point in my life, it is a frozen margarita pizza by California Pizza Kitchen, CPK.
I love ordering milk, and they have a cake and shake like special where
The brand.
the brand, yeah.
Like a gallon of milk.
No, can you imagine?
First of all, I like to overcook it where it's like almost, it's not like black burnt, but like burnt where it's like crispy because it's such thin crust. My decadence part of making it a dish is drizzling like some really nice olive oil and then sprinkle some like sea salt on top that just like, you know, kind of magnifies the flavors. And I'll eat that whole pizza with no shame.
It's like a cake cookie store. They're known for making like ice cream that tastes like cereal milk. That's why they're called milk. Anyway, they have a cake and shake special, and it's really good because you get a piece of cake and a shake. I usually just eat the shake and then I'll eat the cake the next day. So it's like a 2-day like dessert.
2-day treat.
Yeah, it's amazing. But
Oh, you're a big ranch fan.
I am the fan is like putting it lightly. Like ranch is in my
your
DNA. Yeah. Ranch is like I would eat a ranch salad. Like, but they make ranch salad. Like they don't make ketchup and penne, but like they definitely
make
mix
penne and ranch?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've already talked extensively about food and class on this channel, but I think a lot of our initial aversion to penne and ketchup is just identifying ketchup as this kind of low-class, shelf-stable food more associated with cheap American cuisine than Italian cuisine, which is given more reverence and more social cachet.
You know, I read an interesting, they did a cell phone ping study where they wanted to know where the highest overlap between the very rich and the very poor occurs. And they would study cell phone, like, pinging. And they figured out that, like, the biggest overlap actually occurs at places like Chili's, McDonald's, Ruby Tuesdays, like Applebee's, Olive Garden. The very, very rich and the very, very poor go there for very different reasons, you know. But it is like an overlapping of the classes that I just find it fascinating. I mean, it's all a construct. Any part of society is a construct. I mean, gender's a construct. Everything's a construct. So poor people food, lobster used to be like poor people food, and now it's a rich person food. Like,
Absolutely.
it's all whatever the person at the top says it is. And it's just, do we buy into that or do we not?
But ketchup is, at its most basic essence, just a thin tomato sauce. And tomato sauce is a very normal thing to have on penne. So my hot take is penne with ketchup, good, actually.
I can say that it surprised me that it was not bad. And then the Gouda cheese that you shredded on top was incredible. Like, that really made it great. I feel like I'm in my head when I was eating it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there is a stoner aspect to it. I'm just gonna say.
100%.
Yeah.
It was the 70s.
You know, the 60s and 70s was when like frozen food and processed food, that's like a lot coming out of that time period, and making easy meals.
Right.
You know, that's when we were able to start freezing food and making it last longer for the most of America. Never say that you don't like something until you've tried it once. And that's not with every life like opportunity that comes your way, but specifically with food. Like, you should always try food.
Anyway, my boyfriend and I took the penne and ketchup leftovers and ate them all.
It was between Ephesus and Athens, as Dad used to say, that my parents fell in love.
To represent the beginning and end of his parents' romance, Luca Dotti chose a sea bass recipe from a famed Turkish restaurant, Pandeli's, that his parents visited in Istanbul the summer they met, and stuffed tomatoes, a dish he'd often have with them on their excursions outside of Rome, noticeably less and less as their marriage deteriorated. So I made both. Both are very easy recipes, with the adviso that the tomatoes are a bit time-consuming and the sea bass can be somewhat expensive, depending on where you're located. Also, the stuffed tomatoes are vegan. For the tomatoes, I cored 4 large tomatoes, reserving the tops and pulp. The pulp is mixed with rice and seasoning, and after setting for an hour or more, stuffed back into the tomatoes and baked for another hour, arranged in a bed of peeled potato wedges. The potatoes looked nasty as hell when they came out of the oven, but they tasted surprisingly delicious because they had absorbed a lot of tomato juice. The sea bass is prepared en papillon, in foil. This is a recipe you could literally make on a camping trip, assuming you're going with campers with a very refined palate. Assemble each piece of foil with rounds of peeled potatoes, thyme, sea bass fillets, and a melange of cherry tomatoes, herbs, and shallots. Close each packet up and bake in the oven, or over your campfire, for about 20 minutes. You don't even need any oil. While the tomatoes and sea bass were baking, I made an original Bellini made of pureed white peaches and a good Prosecco. The Bellini and beef carpaccio are both inventions of Harry's Bar, a Venetian restaurant and frequent haunt of Venice's many celebrity visitors throughout the 20th century. Luca Dotti includes both recipes in Audrey at Home because of the association he had and his mother had between his father, psychiatrist Dr. Andrea Dotti, and the city of Venice.
Just so everybody knows, you were saying that it came from this place called Harry's in Venice, and that's where the Bellini and Carpaccio were made, and I just like flat out was like, lies, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then I'm like, wait a minute, do you mean Venice, Italy?
And once my guests were good and tipsy, dinner was served.
First of all, you did a beautiful job. I'm a stuffed bell pepper fan. Never had stuffed tomatoes, but that was so good. The juices, I don't like full tomatoes myself. Like I'll have sauces, like salsas, ketchups, all the things, but I can't do like full tomatoes. Like even on a hamburger, no tomato, take the tomato off. But like having rice inside of a tomato, you just like all the jelly part just like infuses with it, and it was just so scrumptious.
The stuffed tomato was so good. It was so good. I just imagine my mom making it.
This sea bass in foil. When you think of Audrey Hepburn, you think of this classic, beautiful, timeless Hollywood movie star. And then her favorites were some of the most unconventional dishes. Sea bass is a great fish already, you know? And so some people would be like, how dare you put a sea bass in a foil? But it was great. And then with the tomatoes and the, what was it, thyme and cilantro?
Thyme, parsley, basil, and shallot.
Such great flavors. And the potatoes.
I don't eat fish with an asterisk next to it, and the asterisk, it just means like I don't eat bad fish. Like I eat good fish, and this fish was good, so I ate it. Like,
since these were dishes tied to important periods in Audrey's life, the beginning and end of a romance, I asked Spark and Brian if there were any particular dishes that they associated with good times and bad.
What an amazing question. I think foods create emotions, and there are definitely different types of foods for different types of moods.
In college, I feel like if I was like super depressed, it would be mashed potatoes and gravy, because it's just like you just feel like you're getting a hug.
For the good times and like family, my grandmother's Spritz cookies, which is an almond-based sugar cookie, and then you sprinkle it with powdered sugar on top. My grandmother would make these every Christmas, and with me and my twin sister, and we would learn how to make them and sift through the flour and let the butter get to a soft room temperature, and like learned the basics of baking without even knowing that we were doing it. The Spritz cookies, that is hands down literally happiness in my mind. When you go on a date, the first thing you think about is taking someone out for dinner. You know, like, I mean, obviously you can go on a coffee date nowadays, which is a thing, but really a date is going out to dinner and having a food experience together.
I think I rely on food more when I'm like experiencing maybe a negative emotion.
I don't know about like when there's hard times or anything, I go to soups. Yeah, they're comforting. Being in the kitchen, that's where people like come to when they're in home. Like when you have friends and family, you end up in the kitchen.
I do love, we're doing Thanksgiving this year, and I can whip up a casserole. That's I mean, they're family recipes. I can whip up a casserole. So I guess if I'm thinking about a recipe that I could make for him that reminds me of him is a casserole or a pie or something around Thanksgiving or Christmas that, because it's always to make him happy.
It's all surrounded by food. Food is what brings people together. It allows people to relax themselves, feel satiated. There's the physical characteristics of it, and then there's the emotional feelings you can get from flavors and aromas and textures.
Our dinners with Spark and his husband Brian were delightful. Experimenting with Audrey Hepburn's recipes turned cooking a meal into a fun game. But even aside from that, sitting over a table of good food and really talking and thinking about what was on our plates forced us to focus on the importance of nutrition, not just as something that nourishes our bodies, but as something that grounds us to periods of our life and to the people and world around us. Flavor and aroma and nutrition are more than gustatory pleasures. They're fundamental parts of the human experience. Eras of our lives can be demarcated by plates and bowls. What do you think it is about food that feels so much more personal?
I mean, food is where the soul goes to. It is how you speak in another language with the things that give you life. I mean, what can I say? I love food. It is one of the main things in this world that literally brings people together. When you go to a house party and you're just hanging out with your friends at their house, the first place you go and hang out is in the kitchen. You always end up in the kitchen. I think that food is something that not only shows culture, but brings people together. And also it tastes really good.
Food literally brings people together.
There is, however, one more recipe I need to try. And this is what I'm going to share with all of you in its entirety. For it, we'll need 8 teaspoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, and a liter of drinkable water. Combine all ingredients in a large jug, stir, and serve.
And when the impact becomes visible in rising death rates among children, then what has happened is simply an outrage against a large section of humanity. Nothing can justify it.
It's not the most exciting recipe, certainly not the most flavorful. I don't make it a lot, but it is great for a hangover. And it's probably the most important recipe I know. Oral rehydration therapy was first used by a young doctor in the first year of his residency in Bangladesh in 1968. With intravenous fluids inaccessible during a cholera outbreak at a tent hospital, Dr. David Nayland treated patients with a solution of water, glucose, and sodium, which proved effective not just for cholera patients, but as a replacement for IV treatment for most cases of diarrhea. UNICEF would later comment on the discovery, "No other single medical breakthrough of the 20th century has had the potential to prevent so many deaths over such a short period of time, and at so little cost." The most fascinating chapters of Audrey Hepburn's life, in my opinion, were very close to the beginning and right at the end. She was born in 1929, so she was only 10 when the Second World War began. Audrey had spent her early years living with her parents in Britain, but her mother, Ella van Heemstra, was a member of the Dutch aristocracy. Believing that the Netherlands would remain neutral and that Audrey would be safer there, Ella fled to Arnhem with her daughter. The Germans invaded the Netherlands the following year. Audrey changed her name to Etta van Heemstra and studied ballet through her preteen and teen years, raising money for the Dutch resistance by giving secret performances. During the Dutch famine, she suffered from malnutrition and edema, and she spent the last days of the war hiding from the Nazis in a wine cellar. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, Audrey Hepburn was one of the child recipients of aid from a predecessor of what would come to be known as the United Nations Children's Emergency Fund, and then the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. Recalling the liberation of Holland many years later, Hepburn told a story about a Canadian soldier who gave her 7 chocolate bars and a meal made with condensed milk, and starving, She consumed them so fast that she made herself sick. Audrey Hepburn would later spend a great deal of her retirement doing advocacy work for UNICEF, serving as their official Goodwill ambassador from 1989 until shortly before her death of abdominal cancer at the age of 63. Her last trip on behalf of UNICEF was to Somalia in late 1992 during a civil war.
Despite the good work she had done, feelings of injustice towards our society and how it was treating its future generations reached a peak as a result of her Somalia trip. "I am filled with rage at ourselves," she said in an interview. How could she not? After living through the war and hearing a repenting world proclaim, "Never again," unfortunately it did, and still does, again and again and again.
Since the world has existed, there has been injustice. But it is one world, the more so as it becomes smaller, more accessible. There is no question that there is a moral obligation for those who have to give to those who have nothing.
Time is running out for Palestinian children. There is literally nowhere safe in the Gaza Strip. 1.7 million people have been displaced, many of them multiple times, and 500,000 people are now trapped in famine conditions as aid is deliberately restricted by Israel's border policies. More than 50,000 children have been killed or injured since October of 2023. The ongoing crisis in Democratic Republic of Congo can be traced back to the 1994 Rwandan genocide. After a short, uneasy period of peace, a Tutsi-led rebel group known as M23 captured a number of DRC's eastern provinces, killing thousands. Civilians have been the deliberate targets of violence, including sexual violence, which is recognized as a war crime by international courts. Around 7 million people have been displaced, resulting in 15.4 million children in need of immediate humanitarian assistance, including 1.3 million children under the age of 5 in need of treatment for severe wasting during an ongoing famine. Sudan, where a civil war has broken out between the Sudanese armed forces and a paramilitary group, Rapid Support Forces, is experiencing the most dire humanitarian crisis on Earth at the moment. Both groups have been accused by various human rights organizations as targeting civilians, and the RSF has been accused of ethnic cleansing in West Darfur. The number of dead is over 150,000 and counting. Sexual violence is rampant, including hundreds of cases of the rape of children, some as young as 1. Around 12 million people, more than a quarter of Sudan's population, have been displaced, which has resulted in a cholera outbreak and widespread famine.
I don't believe in collective guilt, but I do believe in collective responsibility. Parents are not enough. Teachers are not enough. Doctors are not enough. Friends are not enough. But all of us together have a chance.
Often we ask, what if it was your child? What if it were your sibling, your niece or nephew? What if it was a child you knew and cared about, loved even, being bombed or shot or starved? But I can't stop thinking that they are our children. Every life destroyed or cut short is humanity's loss. Tens of thousands of Audrey Hepburns are being lost forever. Countless actors and doctors and writers and researchers and musicians and leaders and mothers and friends are being lost every minute. Children who were wanted and loved are being systematically destroyed along with their parents, their teachers, their cousins, their friends. Generations that would have come after them are being erased. This is not Palestine's or Sudan's or the Congo's loss. This is our collective loss. Genocide necessarily begets the diminishment and degradation of all humanity. I don't know how to explain to people that they should also care about the adults, that they are not responsible for what is happening to them either, and that they deserve to live. But I think it's easier to appeal to people's drive to protect the innocent, to save the children, so to speak. It's an easier position to defend in such a politicized climate. Only a real sicko would be in support of more dead and dismembered children. So, I'd like to exploit this cheap common ground for good. At the time of this video's release, we should be nearing October. If you have a house on a regular trick-or-treating route, if trick-or-treating is still or ever was a thing in your part of the world, you might see some children carrying around these. UNICEF's annual trick-or-treat box. If you do spot one of these on Halloween, please drop a few coins in the box. But if you don't, or if you're watching this some other time of year, there will be a fundraiser for UNICEF running on this video indefinitely. Like most charities, UNICEF is an imperfect organization, but they're a global charity that has been placing special emphasis on driving aid for children in Palestine, the Congo, and Sudan. The attention given to the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza and the public reaction to it has been one of the most important world events to happen in my lifetime, and without undermining or diminishing it, I would really love to see a similar groundswell of support for Sudanese and Congolese people. UNICEF is currently aggressively focused on driving funding and support for children in these areas, and UNICEF staff have been consistently putting their lives at risk, delivering food aid and medical care to Palestine's, Sudan's, and the Congo's most vulnerable. The sheer magnitude of the suffering and loss is inconceivable and paralyzing. Donating the monetary equivalent of a latte or even a large sum of money feels futile and fruitless, especially when a lot of aid is being deliberately blocked. But some of it is getting through, and some children will be saved as a result of our decision to act in any way that we can. To paraphrase an activist and mother who was once a very pretty actress, what I can give and do is not enough. What you can give and do is not enough. But all of us together have a chance.
I would like to read to you something very, very important, and it moves me deeply to have this privilege. The preamble to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Every child shall enjoy the following rights, without any exception whatsoever, and shall be entitled to them without distinction or discrimination on account of race, color, sex, language, religion, or politics. The child shall enjoy social protection and be given the opportunities, facilities, and means to enable development physically, mentally, morally, and spiritually in conditions of freedom and dignity. The child shall be entitled from birth to a name and nationality. The child shall be entitled to grow and develop in health and shall have the right to adequate nutrition, housing, recreation, and medical services. The child who is physically, mentally, or socially handicapped shall be given special treatment, education, and care. The child needs love and understanding and shall have the right to grow up in an atmosphere of affection and security. The child is entitled to receive education and an opportunity to develop abilities in order to become a useful member of society. The child shall in all circumstances be among the first to receive protection and relief in times of emergency and disaster. The child shall be protected against all forms of neglect, cruelty, and exploitation, and shall not be admitted to employment before an appropriate minimum age. The child shall be protected from practices which may foster racial, religious, and other forms of discrimination, and shall be brought up in a spirit of understanding, tolerance, friendship among peoples, peace, and universal brotherhood. These rights were put into words in the Declaration on the Rights of the Child 30 years ago. Today and now, on this anniversary day, they have become part of the most comprehensive treaty for the protection and support of children in history.